we wrap up the timeline, I found a post on
Stockholm Syndrome.
Stockholm Syndrome. You were kind of close.
I was talking about Florence Nightingale.
Yeah.
Well, Florence Nightingale syndrome is, what is that one? That's a caregiver falls in love with a patient.
Oh,
so
gotcha.
it's similar.
Yeah.
It's someone falling in love with someone who they're not supposed to.
Yeah.
Necessarily.
So I found this post from a gentleman named Dave on the website Backcountry Post. It was from June 17th of 2012. I don't normally include this kind of stuff in here, but he had pictures, and he actually did the hike and was pretty much standing in the same area that Garrett and his father would have been fishing in. So these are the direct posts from this gentleman, and Joe...
I'll be pulling them all up.
Joe will be pulling up some pictures that just to show the area. So this poster goes on to say, high elevation hiking in the Uinta.
No, there's no T. Uinta.
I'll never get that right. In mid-June, not something one can do every year. This quick out and back trip meant to capitalize on that. Nick and a coworker of mine both put the story of Garrett Bardsley back in my head, independent of one another. I'd covered the story when it originally happened, along with the deaths of Carol Weatherton and Kim Beaverly, which are two great mysteries of the area, which we'll probably have to check out at some point.
Yes.
Having never been to the Krugerrand Basin myself, it seemed good to target for a day hike. I drove out to the North Slope on Friday night after work, arriving late. I set up for a night sky shot, taking advantage of the moonless sky before heading off to bed. Morning came quick. I made it on the trail by about 8 a.m., round about the same time Garrett disappeared. There were only two other vehicles in the Pass Lake trailhead lot, and I passed no one on my hike into the basin. The trail, which later splits and also serves the Camas Lofty Lake Loop, crosses the edge of a beautiful space called Reed's Meadow. This is the headwaters of the main fork of the Weber River. It provides a commanding view of the 11,708-foot Reed's Peak due south. Joe's
that's Reed's Peak up there.
showing that picture.
For those listening, I'm showing a picture of Reed's Peak.
Which is a giant mountain.
Which is a mountain.
Yes.
That's your description. Yeah. Let's move on.
So beyond the meadow, the trail ambles along to the southern base of the 11,340-foot Mount Marcel. It skirts along the lower slope of Marcel as it climbs and then drops into the Krugerrand Basin. As near as I can tell from 8-year-old media reports, Kevin and Garrett Bardsley were fishing on the bank of Krugerrand number 1 when he soaked his shoes and socks.
So, this is real small.
Yeah.
That's why it's not on the list.
It's almost like a pond.
If this was on the list, I'd say get it off that list.
And then you take a puff of your cigar.
I'd be right next to that guy at his desk with his arms crossed. Get it off the list.
You take the light and shine it in his eyes. Like,
yeah.
Wow, we're going off the deep end here.
There we go.
He goes on to say the rest of the Boy Scout group were camped just up the hill at Krugerrand number 4. Display image number 3. That is the other lake. The trail between the lakes is short but much more faint than the trail leading to the basin. This shows the rough location of the trail in relation to the lakes.
That's the path.
So this is an image of Google Earth with the trail marked in red for those listening. He goes on to say it roughly follows the outlet from Krugerrand number 4 that at times flows down to number 1. Kevin Bardsley has said that he saw Garrett miss the trail. The father called out to his son and pointed out the mistake. Garrett then headed up into the trees and was never seen again. He goes on to say the terrain is wooded and rocky from within the trees. It can be hard to get one's bearings. The slopes of Marcel rise sharply on the east, but the southwestern horizon opens into a wide expanse of the middle fork of the Weber. He goes on to say, did Garrett get lost and wander aimlessly in that direction? ? He goes on to say, I'm not so sure. Even a 12-year-old could recognize after 30 minutes to an hour of wandering that he is hopelessly lost when the walk should have taken 2 or 3 minutes tops. I'm going to stop right there. I don't think so. Having been lost a lot, your drive is not to think, like a lot of times people will wander for hours.
And you got to think in a 12-year-old's mind.
Yeah.
This is like the weird thing that comes into play that happens to people when they're in distress. They get embarrassed.
Yeah.
So that's where I think like an adult might start calling out if he doesn't want to seem like weak or something like that, he might be like, I can figure it out, and then continue to go
overly
deeper.
confident.
Yeah, or even like still scared, but like I don't want to call for. I just think of my boys. Like we don't treat them this way, but they're totally try and suck it up.
Yeah,
and I don't know if it's natural for boys or whatever, but I remember when I was 12, you want to be tough, you want to be seen as like macho, even though you're not because you're 12. But I could imagine, and this is just my opinion, this is not based on any fact, that if maybe he didn't think he was lost, or maybe he's like, okay, maybe I'm lost, but I can figure it out. Well,
and at that age, I think this comes as you get older with wisdom. I did air quotes.
And you looked right into my eyes.
Yeah. When you're young, you don't necessarily think about where this could lead, like what terrible outcomes could happen from becoming totally lost. You're soaked. It's cold out. Like you're probably, you're not thinking those kind of thoughts as an adult who's done, a decade of hiking. The second I'm lost, I'll be thinking about that.
Yeah. And I think too, it's almost like movies make it worse because you think bad things happen and there's like a crescendo that like denotes a bad thing.
Yeah.
And in real life, when there's a death or an accident, it just happens.
Yeah.
And then it's like, you have to process what's happening. Like a lot of the times, especially when you're lost, you're already in it. And I think people expect to like slowly become more lost, but like they don't realize like, no, you are already lost.
Yeah. And once you realize you're lost, you may start to panic, and panic will lead to making more bad decisions. And that is in the case of an adult.
Yes.
Who, children's brains aren't fully developed yet. And I don't think it's reasonable to expect
some adult brains aren't fully developed.
I don't think it's reasonable, I don't think it's you should expect that a child would necessarily make the right decision in this kind of situation.
I agree.
Yeah, because they don't have the experience of it. They don't, they're not fully developed yet. So I could totally see him wandering around a while and then panicking and then wandering even more. Mm-hmm. So I got to find where I was. So yeah, I stopped.
Right here, you can click on
it. It says, because the base is an amphitheater, sound carries very well. Calling out from within a quarter to half mile of camp could have roused the troops. That's a good point. There were no reports of him yelling like if you were lost. Like
that's kind of where I was thinking.
You hear the echo like, hey, hey, hey. Like,
yeah, that's where I'd think like a 12-year-old boy among peers, that many. You don't want to go back to camp and be the guy that got lost and you're going to get razzed. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, and that's a real thing that can happen. Not even that they'd be bullying him, but more like buddy, like, oh, you got lost. Oh, you got lost. And you're like, I don't want to deal with that.
I mean, probably bullying. Everyone's been a kid.
Yeah.
Like, especially.
Yeah, technically that's bullying.
These are scouts that live in the mountains. Like, if one of them like got lost.
Yeah, hey, remember when you got lost? Oh, way to go. Like, it would be stuff like that.
And as
an
adult,
expect.
You just shake it off like, oh, whatever.
Yeah, you're like, yeah, I did.
If it was your buddies ribbing you for it, you'd be like, whatever. But as a kid, that's a big deal.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah. So the poster goes on to say, Garrett's story bothers me even more now that I've scoped out the terrain. There are plenty of possible scenarios from loss of injury to abduction to animal attack, but none really seem to jibe for me. In any case, I headed up to Kubrick number 4, circled around to its eastern edge, then started up the boulder field. I didn't include the rest of his posts because it wasn't really...
Yeah. Just an image of the boulder field.
Yeah, just
it's pretty wide open, which sound would carry there.
Yeah.
There's no trees blocking it. It's pretty sparse. Like you could hear someone from pretty far away.
Yeah, and at the time of his disappearance, it was cold. And I think it rained and hailed.
So he's wet. It's cold.
Wet, no gear.
Oh, okay.
So
that's dire.
Yeah.
All right. What do the authorities think?
So theories.
I have a couple theories. I'm going to hold on to them.
Authorities believe the boy may have become do you want to say it?
Nope. Say it.
Disorientated.
Nope. Disoriented. You added tated.
So both ways of saying it are correct.
Did you look this up?
Is
it nuclear and nuclear?
Someone sent an email and so
it's someone like you who says it disorientated. They're sick of people telling him it's wrong.
So he got confused on his way back to camp.
There you go.
And might have sought shelter as temperatures plummeted to near 18 degrees that night. That's freezing. The mountainous terrain, about 50 miles east of Salt Lake City, has altitudes between 9 and 10,000 feet. The local police also ruled out kidnapping or abduction based on the evidence. So I think a pretty solid theory is in line with what authorities said is exposure. I think if he got lost and he's wet, there's absolutely no way he's surviving that night.
Yeah.
In 18-degree weather. He probably, I mean, that makes sense. Like, if they found a sock, he probably went in the hypothermia and was starting to,
paradoxical undressing.
Taking socks off. And I think another possible theory we've talked about, they're very rare, but cougar and mountain lion attacks on children.
Yeah.
I saw a video.
A 12-year-old's getting large enough where it'd be
105
iffy.
pounds. I saw a video.
Yeah.
Someone posted, I was looking on YouTube, and I saw a video someone posted of a mountain lion dragging a full adult deer.
Like up a tree? Or just down a path?
Like he had a trail camera out.
Yeah.
And the mountain lion just walked by dragging a full buck. Like,
yeah. So this will sound a little morbid, but I feel like you'd hear that.
Yeah.
Because if I was attacked, I'd be screaming.
Yeah.
Like probably a volume that I would not normally be able to achieve because of adrenaline.
Unless he was wandering and wandered away from the group and then was attacked. But even then, mountain lion cougar attacks are incredibly rare.
Yeah.
Especially in daylight. Mm-hmm. They're nocturnal, I believe.
Yes. At least that's when I've seen them. But whenever I've seen the prints, they've always turned up after night.
I went deer hunting as a kid. I know how heavy bucks are. And when I saw that video of a mountain lion dragging a buck,
and it's not field dressed yet.
No,
so it's full weight.
It's a full size deer, and it was dragging it. So it's not out of the realm of possibilities, but like we said, very unlikely. There are bears, black bears in this area, but again, they're very afraid of people. They're not going to attack someone. Mm-hmm. I don't know. What do you think? Think
first I'm going to start with your pronunciation of disoriented. You're right and wrong.
Ooh.
The word you're saying is an entirely different word with the same meaning.
Oh.
There's disoriented and disorientated. They generally have the same meaning, but it's two separate words.
Okay.
So you're still reading the word wrong, but you're replacing it with the correct word for the meaning.
Gotcha.
So technically, I'm wrong for yelling at you.
Oh, well, thank you.
And I'll admit it. Even though you read it wrong, it still has the same meaning and it does exist.
I'm never going to get that word right. It's so stupid.
Like our last episode,
yeah.
Our 1000th episode, right before we retire.
Yeah.
You'll say it correctly.
I'll be like, I knew it all along.
All right. So my not off the deep end theory, I really think in this case, based on the images I saw, obviously I've never been there, so there could be things I don't know.
Yeah.
I am starting to lean more and more towards some sort of crevasse or fall.
Okay.
Where if he went off path.
Yeah.
So he's off path. If he went into that boulder field and dropped down like a 20-foot drop.
Yeah.
That's real small. Maybe get knocked out or injured enough where he can't call out and then unfortunately perish there. To me, that's like the most reasonable based on the images I've been looking at because it's so sparse. And I've been into areas when I was trying to do Knife's Edge, we were up in a outcropping that was very similar to this terrain.
Yeah.
With more trees than this.
Yeah.
And we didn't get separated, but our group split up. We were taking two different paths. And we could communicate to each other by yelling the entire time, and there was a significant distance between us.
Yeah.
Much more than any of the stuff I was seeing here on the map.
Yeah.
So that tells me, okay, if he's lost and they're calling for him and marching around, he would have been able to hear it, and if he wasn't injured, he probably would have been able to call back. So my gut's telling me it's some sort of accident or injury that left him unconscious.
Yeah.
Long enough to maybe when he comes to, if he even does, he's hypothermic now and can't do much.
Yeah.
Or unfortunately, he got knocked out and just perished wherever that accident occurred. That's to me like.
I think that's pretty in line with what the authorities think.
Okay.
I mean, they think he got confused and wandered. I mean, I think I'm in kind of the same train as you. I think he got turned around.
He's wet with no gear.
Yeah.
I mean, no gear in that cold. Okay. Odds are still really low, but possible. We've seen it in this show. where people have survived for multiple nights with no gear and cold.
Yeah, that guy in Mount Rainier.
Exactly, but they're dry. Wet is
and he had gear.
Yeah. Wet is an entirely different story because the clothes aren't going to dry out.
I believe the weather was already like cold that day. So
yeah, that's what you said before. So if it was already cold towards the end of the day, he gets wet and gets lost.
Yeah.
That's the biggest recipe for disaster ever.
And the authorities think, I mean, you could see for a small child, there might be lots of little things you could climb into, like, and you're thinking like, oh, I'm going to hold out for the night in this little cave.
And even then, sitting on those rocks will absorb all your body heat. Like, you don't want to lean up against those rocks. You don't want to even touch those rocks because you want to go to like moss or like grass, something that's insulated. If he like got into an area like that, he'll just get hypothermic faster.
And I don't know if you can go like find this lake on Google Earth.
Yeah, I'll pull it up while I'm not showing the screen right now, so I'll pull it up when I have it.
I'm just thinking personally, if I got lost in this area, and I looked at the map, I can't remember how many lakes there were, but my first inclination would be to find a lake and hang out on its shore.
Yes.
And maybe try to get a fire going or, some kind of signal. Because, depending on the terrain and how thick of vegetation is, they're not going to find you from, air searches. But if you're hanging out on a shore of a lake.
Yeah, you could do something.
Yeah.
It's put rocks in SOS or something like that. Like make some sort of sign, bring some logs around.
Yeah.
Like show that it's not natural, something going on there.
Yeah.
So what's the lake called?
Kuberent Basin. Cuberent.
All right. I'll share while I'm searching, so.
Oh, it's Cuberant.
I got it right. I copied it from the thing.
All right, let's see what it looks like.
All right, yep, Lake United Mountains, Summit County. This is the one.
So that's the lake he was fishing on.
Yeah, so he was on this area here.
Yep. So there's another lake.
So he would have been going south.
Okay.
So he would have ended up, this looks like it's uphill.
Yeah.
You're not going to be going uphill.
And let's see where they
this is not very wooded.
Yeah. Well, where'd they find his sock? That was,
and were they positive it was his?
I mean, they were not positive. It was matching the description of the socks he was wearing. And what are the odds of a child's Nike sock being found out here? It
wasn't just a plain white.
No, it was a white Nike sock, like matching exactly what he was wearing. Oh yeah, here it is. They, let's see. They found, trying to figure out.
While Mike's searching, we'll have a word from our sponsors. Pringles. I've been enjoying Pringles throughout the show while Mike's been talking. Sour cream and onion is the one I've been eating. Back to you, Mike.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you to Pringles.
Pringles is not sponsoring the show.
It was found half a mile from the last place he was seen.
Which was like pretty much
in a boulder field.
Okay.
So
let's see how far this boulder field is from this area.
Not a half mile.
That's a quarter mile. Not even a quarter mile. All right, here's another boulder field. That's almost a half mile away.
So assuming he didn't get that far, I don't know.
I'm doing a radius here. It's got to be like this big open area right here.
I don't know. It just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
Other than the fact that if he was already hypothermic.
Because his dad saw him going that way.
Yeah.
We know that. This is the only area that's a half a mile away. Everything else is either closer or really far off. So it's got to be like right in here. And their camp was like right here.
Yeah. The only thing I can think of is he was already hypothermic.
Yeah.
Heading back to his camp to change. And he just started making, compromised decisions based on that.
If you get cold quick, you won't be able to really talk.
Yeah.
You won't be able to really move.
Yeah.
But that's also where I feel like this is why I feel like he fell down something.
Yeah, I'm injured.
They would have found. I feel like there's a high likelihood they would have found his body.
Yeah, I think
because it's not densely populated in this area with trees. Like it's not. And the areas that are the most densely populated are near where his camp was.
Yeah.
So if he's out in a boulder field where they found the sock, the fact that he lost the sock in a boulder field means that either he's making bad decisions because of the hypothermia, the paradoxical undressing, but then there would be more clothing.
The crazy thing is, the search started only 40 minutes later.
That's where,
How far could he have gotten in this train in 40 minutes?
If he's moving kind of far.
Yeah.
You can walk. Now, this is mountains, so it's slower than just like flat ground, but you can walk, a mile in maybe 20 minutes?
Maybe he went up into the boulder field, and we don't know if that's boulder field or not, but maybe he went into one of those to try to get a better view, and then for some reason took his sock off and kept moving.
Well, we can do the worst case scenario. If you can walk a mile in 20 minutes, so 2 miles, there's a lot going on within 2 miles.
Yeah.
Actually. Yeah, there's a lot of...
They only searched a 3-mile radius. So,
okay. I think that's fair because it starts getting very rugged at the 2 mile. I'm just, for those listening, I got the map open and I got this ruler out that just shows distance, and I'm kind of just doing a circle 2 miles out from the point of the lake where they were fishing.
And there's some really nasty terrain that I doubt a child with no gear would be able to traverse.
Man, 12-year-olds. I'm just thinking of mine. Like,
how far can you
walk? Well, here's the deal too. He might be like, I'm going to go up a mountain to go see better.
Yeah.
Like, there's not I got to stop thinking like an adult.
Yeah.
Because like even as an adult, sometimes you look at a hill and you're like, oh, it's not too bad, and then you get halfway up, you're like, holy cow, it's the mountains though. This is tough. This is hard. But there's some gnarly terrain when you start getting out to 1.5 miles away.
Yeah.
So.
And they pretty much searched a 3-mile radius of this area, but you can see 3-mile radius is a lot of unforgiving terrain.
Yeah, and I would hope that, when you get to like 1 mile away, you realize you're nowhere near where you're supposed to be.
And what is that? Is that a road that's named?
That's a river.
Weber
River. That's just south. So, yeah, there's no real roads. The roads are to the north.
Or east.
But really far east.
Yeah.
You'd have to cross the river or go over that mountain. Mount Marcel. So
chances are,
I think he fell down something.
And he fell into an area that they weren't easily able to find him.
Yeah. Unless you're like right on top of it. That's kind of what I...
04, it's been what, 19 years now? No, they haven't found anything else.
No remains or anything?
They haven't even found the fishing pole. So.
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean anything, but...
it's something that would survive the elements longer.
It's a remote area. It's not like he's in Yellowstone or Yosemite, but
but you got to think people are camping up here.
Yeah, the puzzling thing is just how quickly the search started, and they still couldn't find him.
That's so sad.
Actually, I'm more on your train now. That leads me to think that he suffered some kind of accident or fall. Something pretty quickly from when he went missing.
Yeah, well, and that's the only reason I keep saying like a hole is I think something definitely debilitated him to the point where he couldn't speak or yell or move.
Yeah.
But then they couldn't find him, and that's where I'm like, he's got to be under a thing. Now, they did say there was a bunch of snow that came within the couple days. So maybe it's not down a hole, but it could be like in like a depression.
Well, even the Forest Service in their documents about safety in the forest talk about old mine shafts and things.
Yeah,
he could have stumbled across an old mine shaft that was covered with some, lightly covered with some debris.
Maybe like went to check it out even,
or didn't even know it, like stepped on it.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm with you on that one. I think the authorities are,
one of those like it's like a perfect storm tragedy.
Yeah,
like
and the search happened. So that's what I can't wrap
my head around. The
search happened quick
based on the terrain within a 2-mile radius.
Yeah,
he's not moving very far.
No,
he's not covering ground.
Not if he's wet.
I was being generous by giving him the 2 miles, saying, okay, you can do a mile every 20 minutes. The search started at 40. They're calling for him.
Flat terrain.
Yeah, that's if you're walking around the block.
Yeah, not panicked.
Yeah, not panicked. Not semi hypothermic, wet,
cold, hungry,
confused, scared. All of those things. So, that poor kid and the dad, and the family. Well. I don't know. Do you have you don't have an off the deep end, do you? I don't even have there isn't even anything I could come up with that would be off the deep end.
I don't think it was animal attack. I mean, I don't think it's kidnapping.
Yep. I think tragic accident.
Yeah.
And they just have not recovered the remains yet. So.
Yep.